Welcome to another edition of the Octopus Store Hangout. You have a twofer today. We're a couple people short. Uh, but with me today is John Evans.
Why, hello, Red Wings fans, with my fancy little glass here.
And of course, you always have me. So let's just jump right into it. The Winter Classic is over. A poor result for us as Red Wings fans, but I think we can all agree that it was a great event. And at least we were both at the Winter Classic, isn't that right? You know.
Yeah. I made the trip up from Columbus for the alumni game, and I got to stay with some family out in Howell, actually, and then I shot on down to Ann Arbor for the game that day. It was definitely an experience, and anyone with an opportunity to go to a Winter Classic should definitely check it out. I don't think I'm going to dedicate myself to going to every Winter Classic from now on necessarily, but it was a pretty cool experience to be a part of.
Definitely, especially when even though the snow was a little much, I think it made it that much better. The fact that it's snowing, you're outside, you have the ice, and you have an NHL game in front of you.
I feel like you always kind of hope it snows at a Winter Classic, just maybe not necessarily the one that you were at. I went to the alumni game the day before, and the only part of me that was really unreasonably cold was my toes and my feet. I had one pair of wool socks on, so I said if I throw two pairs on, I'll be good to go for the Winter Classic. The second pair did not make the slightest difference whatsoever.
Yeah, no, I was wearing two pairs as well, and even then, my toes were getting a little cold during the Winter Classic.
It
But
was
the cool thing about the alumni game though was that it didn't snow during the game. It snowed during the intermission, and it snowed during like the end of the halves. But that was
yeah,
it.
yeah, pretty much, which was nice, especially for me who started watching hockey in 2002, but never really got to go to a live game until 2008. I never got to see Fedorov play. I never got to see Yzerman play. There was a lot of those guys who I never got to see do anything. So even if it's not nearly in the same capacity as during their playing days, just being able to say I got to see them play was really important to me.
Right. So you've never that was your first time hearing the Shanahan jig.
Yeah, that was the first time seeing anything with Shanahan, anything with Chelios. I think I've seen Osgood because I
Yeah,
got to follow them a
probably.
little in 2010, I want to say, but I can't quite remember. He might have been done and gone by then.
Yeah, I'm actually not. I should know when he retired, but I'm not sure. I think he retired the year after they went to the Stanley Cup Series and lost to Pittsburgh, which would mean he was splitting time with Jimmy Howard in that.
Yeah, yeah, that might have been it, or he might have been injured when I went to go see. I don't know. I know I've seen Joey McDonald play. That's
I'm not sure that's something you should be proud of. But yeah, Christina, also known as at Franzenmuth, was very happy that she got to hear the Irish jig again once Shanahan scored. She was tweeting all about it. It was kind of hilarious, and I have to say myself, going to those games when you're just a youngin', and it brought back a lot of nostalgia, a lot of memories of those guys. But at the same time, I was looking at Eisman, and I'm going, man, his knees have got to be hurting him. And when I was watching him walk down after the first half, and he started limping, I was like, he probably shouldn't come out for the second half. I was
yeah,
like, I was so worried about him.
yeah. There was a lot of speculation as to why he was so reluctant to commit to playing to it, and I kind of assumed, well, stuff going on with the Tampa Bay Lightning, you really have to show that you're committed to this. And I don't even own a pair of skates. Yeah, right, Steve Yzerman. But after kind of watching that play, it's like, okay, I believe it now.
Yeah, his knees have been bad for a while now, and even in his last year in the NHL, his knees were bad. And
Yeah,
so,
and well, like I said, I first started watching it in 2002. So
yeah,
to see him take that knee injury in the playoffs and just keep going with it, I was a freshman in high school and I had injured my knee playing football. So watching him work through a knee injury, of course, I'm a dumb kid, so I feel there's a tie to me working through a knee injury, and that's what always kind of made Steve Eiserman the guy for me. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Let's jump back to Winter Classic. How did you? Because they didn't tell us in the stands that it was going to be a switch 10 minutes into the third period, and then another switch, 2.5 minutes into OT. How did you feel about those when it actually happened?
I had no idea what was going on. I thought like maybe there was some sort of clock malfunction or something. I had no idea they decided to switch it up. I never really figured it out, honestly, because I was in pain at a certain point there. So when there was 10 minutes left in the third, I told my buddy who drove up from Virginia to see it, I said, I know this Red Wings team. There's no way they tie it up. Let's get out of here and beat the traffic on these horrible roads. So naturally, they tie it up during our walk back, but they lose in the shootout. Big surprise there.
Yeah. So you were gone by that point, eh?
Yeah, and I didn't really feel any shame about it at that point. Yeah, I know a lot of people when they go to regular season games get ribbed for leaving when there's 5 minutes left and a 2-goal deficit. Anything can happen, but at that point, I don't feel that I should physically suffer to watch a game, and that was the point that it was getting to for me. So
Yeah,
maybe I
yeah.
wasn't as prepared as I should have been.
No, no, I completely understand that. I mean, I was wearing four shirts, four pants, and a jersey on top of that. So
Yeah. I had a thing like Under Armour like tights, but I couldn't find them before I left Columbus. So I just grabbed this thing of snowboarding pants that was about 4 sizes too small for me and just wore it with the zipper open the entire time over my jeans. And that was about all I had for my lower body. So it was kind of rough for me.
yeah, I think you think the alumni game would have prepared you a little bit for it, eh?
Yeah,
But you
well,
didn't you get to change anything up.
all I really had was the extra pair of wool socks. By the time I left Columbus, I didn't have a huge access to a wardrobe for it. Uh, Let me ask you this: from what you saw in the crowd, does it seem like a majority of them were Leafs fans?
No, I honestly thought it was a great 50-50 split, especially when you look at the gigapixels out now and you look at the panoramas. You see that right at the 50-yard line, it goes from red to blue.
Yeah,
I thought that was crazy.
yeah. I was surprised with how many Leafs people were there, because the thing that you heard about it is a lot of people from Canada were buying tickets, like more than from America. But you had to figure that there's bound to be more Wings fans in Southern Ontario than there are Leafs fans in Michigan. So I just kind of assumed that not necessarily everyone in Canada that was buying it was going to be coming there wearing a Leafs jersey, but it worked out. I was disappointed I didn't see Rob Ford.
He was somewhere in an alley, getting drunk, doing drugs.
Yeah,
And
him.
you can't expect him to go to big events where they actually search you. Although the security at the event was not very good.
Yeah, I was when they're sending you notices with a ticket that specifically say don't bring bags, don't bring this, don't bring that. I was expecting it to be a real process, and I tried to get there even earlier than I would have because I was expecting the security process to take a long time. Which if it keeps everybody safe, I'm not about to complain about it. But it was scan your ticket and you're in. I was a little surprised at that.
They made my dad unzip his jacket and hold it open. I don't know if they did
Oh,
that to you.
I think my jacket might have already been open.
Yeah, that mine was too. So I just walked right by
Yeah,
him. I
yeah.
thought that. But did you ever really feel unsafe in there?
No, no.
Yeah.
It was pretty crowded, but everyone that we were around was kind of safe. And just kind of joking about it. They say something about Detroit being bankrupt. I say something about them accomplishing something since 1967. And then, we just kind of like slap five, and that was about it for my interaction with most Leafs fans.
What
So
what section were you in? Were you on the Detroit side or the Toronto side?
I couldn't figure out which side was which, honestly. The crowd seemed so split to me that way, and where we were generally sitting seemed to be a mix. But yeah,
Well, that's good. You never want to get too Toronto-y around you, you know?
yeah.
Okay, let's jump off the Winter Classic and talk about something kind of related to it. It was HBO 24/7. Um, I know you said you don't really have HBO or were able to really watch much, but did you get a chance to watch any of it?
I picked up the highlights from YouTube basically, and anytime there was any review put up on Puck Daddy or something, I was sure to check it out. Just kind of saying to myself, well, I'm not going to be able to watch this anyway, so that sort of stuff.
Did you get to see any of the Mike Babcock comments or him flipping out on the HBO camera?
I did. I got to see him kind of defeated when he was going through that list of injuries and saying, my daughter called me today and she said she's ready to skate. So there was a little bit of that, and it just kind of gave me the impression that Babcock might be a little weaker than I expected. You always kind of, from all this, it's, anytime someone mentions firing Babcock, you say, well, this person's an idiot. He's one of the best coaches in the game. And he is, and they certainly are idiots with it. But when there's that many injuries through it was almost like you had to see him actually coach compared to he had a great team in Anaheim. He has all these great players in Detroit. I don't think you need to give Pavel Datsyuk too many tips about his game. So from what I kind of saw from it, it was almost like a little bit of a letdown with it. I'm sure he did the best that he could with what he had, but it was, I don't know, maybe he had been built up to be too much of a legend in my mind that I was expecting more out of him. But I don't know, but it's changed my impression of Babcock. I'll put it that way. He seemed a lot more human than I expected.
I'm actually surprised that you took it that way. I don't know how many other people did. I took it in a way that, he was kind of joking about how his daughter had called him and said, she can play. I thought it was more about him showing his personality and then
Yeah.
going, but we still have a job to do, and the next man up has to take that spot, and we're going to coach them and play them the same way we play everybody else, and that to me gave me a greater understanding of how good of a coach he is. Where you kind of went in the he looks kind of defeated, maybe he's not the same person that I thought he was way.
Yeah, and full disclaimer, I didn't get to watch the entire series with it either, so maybe what I did get to see was a little cherry picked from everything. But that was just the general impression that I got, was he just seemed like he was out of answers at a certain point. And I've been out of answers since about the second game of the season, so I'm not trying to be too harsh on the guy, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, the real interesting part in the last series, I actually watched it yesterday when this came out, but he was talking to Brendan Smith and talking about how you know he needs to cut some of his pinching out of the game because he's kind of worried about him pinching and then getting caught and then the Red Wings getting scored on. And he was kind of saying you need to cut that shit out of your game.
Yeah, it's. I wish I could have seen something like that and just understand a little bit more of the technical aspect when it comes to coaching like that. Because the way I always compare Brendan Smith is, we all used to hate Jonathan Erickson for
Yeah.
a while, and it wasn't until Babcock actually kind of said he's the best penalty killer that we have that I was starting to lighten up on it. And he's gotten a lot better as he's aged, and defensemen in general just take longer to develop. So I try not to be too hard on Brendan Smith, knowing that we've just kind of said that stuff. But man, he's frustrates me sometimes.
I don't think you're the only one who he's frustrating. The guy behind me at the Winter Classic, all he did was complain about Quincy and Smith and go, "Why are you pinching there?" And I kind of wanted to turn around and go, "Well, you kept the puck in the zone. What do
Yeah,
you want him to turn around and go backwards and let Toronto have the puck the whole game, or do you want him to pinch down, get a shot on that, or keep the puck deep?" I was,
yeah. I think Quincy's gotten a lot better this year. I still don't like as many risks as Brendan Smith takes, but I also know that's kind of his game. So
yeah.
that's just kind of comes with the territory with him, I guess.
One of the big things about 24/7 was after the second episode came out, I think I'm not sure if it was their director or someone related to HBO came out and said that there'd be more Pavel Datsuk in the next couple episodes.
Yeah,
The only Pavel Datsuk we got in those two episodes was Danny Cleary asking Suri who the Magic Man was, while Pavel Datsuk was next to him.
yeah.
It was a letdown.
Yeah, and there seemed to be things I was expecting from the series that would maybe didn't happen as much. I was expecting more out of Todd Bertuzzi as well, but especially the way the first episode ended with him just drinking a Corona by himself. It made you say, "Oh man, like something's going to come with this. This is supposed to be foreshadowing." Because why else would they end that episode that way? But that's what it just kind of came down to, was like maybe that was the original plan and they didn't get a lot of good usable stuff out of that. And maybe Pavel Datsuk just being Pavel Datsuk, if you check out his Facebook or his Twitter, you know that he has a little bit of charisma to him. He has a little bit of he's a lot more interesting to follow than most average NHL players. But maybe he just wasn't all that comfortable with the camera with it. I don't know. I'm speculating at this point.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting that way. You think that because his dry humor comes out so well if like he's doing an interview with some of the beat writers that he gets along with, or if it's like the Red Wings TV guys. Maybe it was just something where he didn't have the same sort of comfort level with the HBO guys, so he didn't. But it'd be weird. I mean, he's he's a veteran. He knows how to handle himself when there's distractions and things like that. So you think that would not be as much of an issue for him?
Well, this has got to be a unique challenge to him too at this point, in the sense that this isn't anything he's had to deal with before. It's the camera being there all the time, and given that they're on the third season of 24/7, I think I mentioned this on the last Hangout we did. Everyone knows the camera is there. We're not going to get as many genuine moments of spontaneous crazy things happening like we did with the first season. And even now, when we do, you have to kind of question it and wonder, how much of this is getting played up because the
Yeah,
camera is there. But you always know the wit and the humor was there. Maybe he just didn't feel all that comfortable with it. The moment that I always think of as evidence of that is when he got in that fight with Corey Perry. They were talking to him about it after the game, and it was some regular season tilt, and they were asking him about it. He just kind of said, "Yeah, yeah, no Lady Bing this year." So you know he's got it. It's just if he didn't want to let it out at that point, I guess that's his business.
yeah. So are you happy or sad that HBO is over? The HBO 24/7 series is over.
I'm indifferent because I didn't get to watch it,
Yeah.
but the sooner it's over, the sooner it'll be on DVD, and maybe I'll get a chance to watch it. So maybe
But
maybe I'm more excited that it's over than anything. And I don't know too many teams that have been struggling. Then HBO 24/7 shows up, and all of a sudden they go on a 10-game winning streak. You know what I mean? I haven't seen a lot of teams that were helped by it. So if it was a potential distraction, it's not there anymore. So we'll see.
yeah, I absolutely agree with it could have been a potential distraction, and now driving can kind of forget about it. Because even before HBO was there, they're going, oh, they're coming, they're going to be around, and it was always kind of in the back of their head. Now that it's gone, they're not coming back, they're not doing anything. But you also get kind of sad because even though you're waiting for it to come out on DVD, there's not going to be as much content as you'd like there to be.
I
And I think that's kind of where I am. I'm sad to see it go because I wish I could get more of a look inside that locker room and all that. But at the same time, if the distraction's gone, then I'm really happy, and the Red Wings can just get back to playing hockey.
I really wish they'd stuck around for one game after the Winter Classic, just because Detroit was beating the brakes off of Dallas and Toronto was getting gutted by the Rangers.
That would have been good. And I think there are some people. I'm not sure who it was talking about Bernier in that game and saying, "Where was this Bernier for the Winter Classic?"
My fantasy team would sure like to know.
Okay, let's jump off HBO and the Winter Classic, and then let's talk about some injuries that have been going around the Red Wings locker room, and that's in the groin area. Stephen Weiss had surgery for his sports hernia. Pavel Datsyuk is out. Danny DeKaiser is out. Gustafson's out, and Helm are all out due to groin injuries. And these are
And they're
not
not the
the
only ones that have had groin injuries this year, right? There's been other people that are healed
there,
now.
there's been multiple. I believe Helm had a groin injury earlier. Alfredson had a groin injury. Zetterberg had something with his
Bitterberg was a back
groin.
issue, I think.
Yeah, it was a back issue, but he's had lingering groin issues. It came out in 24/7. Um, I mean, Gustafson's this is his second or third groin injury this season. I mean, it at some point it becomes an epidemic in the locker room, and we're dealing with groin injuries that no other team in the NHL is dealing with.
Yeah. It, at a certain point, when three players have had groin injuries, I'm willing to write that off as a coincidence. I'm big on coincidences, but it's gotten to the point where so many of them have added up. You start to say to yourself, okay, what is the training staff doing that's messing all this up? What is their pregame stretching routine that's messing all this up? Like, at a certain point, you're saying to yourself, there has to be something that's making this happen. Because, much like you mentioned, this isn't happening to any other teams in the league. The goalies, I understand, because growing issues with injuries, or with goalies, rather, is pretty common. But to see it this spread out through all the teams, there's got to be something. I don't know what, but there's got to be something.
Yeah, it's either something they're doing or they're not doing. I don't
Yeah.
know if it's the training staff. I don't know if it's the warm-ups, like you said, but either they're doing something wrong or they're not doing something that they should be doing.
Are they all doing high risk yoga on their days off together? I really couldn't tell you, but there's got to be something with this, and I feel like fans in general are all coming to that conclusion, and they're all collectively getting frustrated with it. I think as they start to demand answers, there might be more and more digging that goes into this.
Is if it comes out that it's something the training staff is doing or not doing, should they be held accountable? And should the Red Wings go and try and find a better training staff?
Absolutely. I mean, with that whole Sidney Crosby issue with the Penguins that got botched, and turns out he had some injury in his neck rather than a concussion the entire time or something like that, they canned the entire medical staff for it. And, people need to be held accountable for these things. So I don't know if there's any one particular individual to blame, but if something comes out and it turns out something's really being overlooked, or there's something that 29 other teams are doing that the Red Wings aren't, then in general, fans are going to demand someone's head on a stick for it. Someone needs to be held accountable for it.
Right, and I think you kind of see this more in whether it's college or the NFL, where a strength and conditioning coach is let go and they bring someone else in the next year.
Yeah.
Maybe it's complacency. Maybe some of these. I'm not sure how long the Red Wings medical staff and all that have been together, but at some point, you have to bring someone new in just to kind of get everyone going again. I don't know if it's something like that, or if it's just, you know, it's really hard to say what the actual problem is right now with the groins in Detroit.
Yeah, and maybe it's someone who's so stuck on a old method that with the speed of the game and with the way things are changing, they just need a different, fresh perspective that's more up to date with things as they are now rather than they were in the early 2000s and the 90s. That could be it, just because the game has changed so much that maybe there's certain techniques that should have gone with it that haven't necessarily gone with the Red Wings. Again, I'm completely speculating here. I have no idea.
Right. I
But
don't think anyone really does, except
yeah,
for whatever the training staff or or maybe they don't even know what's really going on. I mean, maybe Red Wings players aren't really coming to them with the issue until it's too late, and then they have to sit out.
A
I
hockey
mean,
player hiding an injury? Do go on. That's never happened.
exactly. So it's all speculation right now, and I don't know. Let's get off injuries and talk about someone who just came back from an injury, and that player is Jimmy Howard. He's 3 games returning from his knee injury. His first game against the Predators did not go so well, and I think a lot of people were calling for his head after that game. But after a solid Winter Classic and a big win against the Stars, is Jimmy Howard back to the form he had last year?
The I would say he probably is back to the form just because the form I've always understood Jimmy Howard to have is to be an incredible frustration to me. PG Marsh, who does the Wizard of Osgood blog, not to be confused with the Wizard of Oz blog, which actually exists and I went to when I was trying to find this article. He did last week. He did the top 10 Detroit goalies from 1932 to 2013, and I think he threw Jimmy Howard in at 8th. I kind of said to myself that if we were doing the 10 most frustrating Detroit goalies, that Howard would have been 1, 2, and 3. Just because the way his style has always been to me, he makes these amazing, ridiculous saves that he has no business making at all, but he gets beat by something really weak that you would have expected 9 out of 10 other goalies to be able to stop. So based on that, that's kind of what I've generally have been seeing from him. So yeah, I'd say Jimmy Howard is back to form. The form is just the same frustration that I'm used to seeing. What's your take on Jimmy Howard?
I think you might be alone with putting Howard at 1, 2, and 3 of the most frustrating goalies because you jumped in a little late, and we had Manny Legacy, who was supposed to take us to the Stanley Cup after Hasek retired because he had the exact same team in front of him.
Yeah.
And boy, that was frustrating. And Chris Osgood, even though he has 400 wins, I think a lot of Red Wing fans were frustrated with how he played in net as well, because it was always a battle for him. It was never very smooth or easy.
Yeah,
So
I'm kind of the opinion that Chris Osgood was more of a mediocre goaltender, but the way I've always which isn't necessarily a knock against him, because I see goaltenders as you have your Pekka Rinne, your Henrik Lundqvist before this year, your goalies that'll stand on their head and they can win the game for you. And then you have your goalies that are good enough that'll give you a chance to win the game. And with the way some of these Red Wings rosters have been built, that's all you really need out of them. So to say Chris Osgood is a mediocre goaltender, to me, isn't necessarily a knock against him, because it still means that he won those 3 Stanley Cups. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So to me, Jimmy Howard is a touch above good enough, but he's pretty far from that superstar status that you always see with some of these goalies, and that's all
hold
right.
on, but would you put Jimmy Howard in your top 10 goalies in the NHL right now?
I don't know, just because based on that parade that we've seen come out of Los Angeles lately, where they can suffer any number of injuries to their goaltenders and keep right on rolling with it. It's tough to say. And then you have all those Finnish goalies. There's a lot of really good Canadian ones. I'd say if you threw Jimmy Howard in a top 10 for the NHL, that would be pretty reasonable. If you throw him in the top 5, you might be out of your mind.
I honestly, Jimmy Howard would be in my top 5.
Okay.
When he is on his game, you have games like the Winter Classic, where it took, JVR batting the puck out of the air over his shoulder in a tiny little area to score a goal, or Bozak, you know, basically deflecting a puck that was going over the net down to the ice a couple feet in front of him. I mean, that's what it takes to beat Jimmy Howard when he's on the top of his game. And even against the Stars, there are times when he does let in soft goals, but every goalie does that. Everyone. Pekka Rinne does it.
Mm-hmm.
Lundqvist does it. Quick does it.
They just seemed Jimmy Howard seems to do it more frequently than the other ones, I would say. And yeah, like you're right. When Jimmy
You just
Howard's on
watch him more. You just watch him play more. That's the main reason.
when Jimmy Howard's on top of his game, you're right. He is pretty difficult to stop. But how often is he on top of his game compared to Jonathan Quick, Antti Niemi, Luongo? Maybe not the best example of these things. Kerry Leitonen when he has a really good team in front of him. I really like Pecorine. Fleury when it's not the playoffs. I feel needs a little qualifier there. So yeah.
Well, Jimmy Howard is the only reason we actually made the playoffs last year.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
He put the team on his back.
And Columbus and
ran them
Minnesota
to the
failing
playoffs.
games.
And then he got them to Game 7. I mean, there's something to be said for doing that and for being that type of player when the pressure's on, he gets it done. And he likes to be that guy. He likes to have all the weight on his shoulders.
Well, you would hope so. If the guy doesn't like the spotlight and he became a goaltender, you kind of have to wonder what the heck he's doing. But I don't know. Jimmy Howard hasn't scored a goal, so maybe he's not as good as Mike Smith.
Oh, God. He also doesn't flop as well as Mike Smith either.
Oh, my God. You saw the article I threw up about that after that happened, but...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's since we're just getting off the topic of Jimmy, let's go Olympic nods. Jimmy got the nod to be one of the 3 goaltenders for USA.
Much to the outrage of seemingly everyone.
Then we have 6 players, including the Monster, going to Sweden.
Yes.
Pavel Datsyuk to Russia, of course.
Yeah.
And we have Thomas Yurko and Thomas Tatar going to Slovakia.
Yes. As well as Zetterberg is going to captain Sweden, I believe I read. And I think they threw Jonathan Eriksson on Sweden as well, which I guess maybe he'll be healthy before then. I don't really know. I didn't really follow that move. But, yeah, a lot of Red Wings going to the Olympics. I had 2 big things to say with it. One is I was planning to put an article together over the next couple of days about why guys on your team going to the Olympics isn't necessarily a good thing, at least how it relates to the NHL team. And there was so much made over. At least this was just in my Twitter feed. People, I don't even want the U.S. to win anymore because of their goaltender choices. Realistically, you're going to play one goalie through the Olympics. Okay, let's be realistic. Maybe you'll go with 2. It's going to be either Quick or Miller at this point. If one goes down, you're going to switch right back to the other. You can throw my mother in as the 3rd goaltender spot for the USA for all the difference it makes. He's probably not going to play that much. So, all this outrage about why they didn't take Corey Schneider or Ben Bishop in that place, or let's just calm down for a minute. Howard's probably not going to get a minute of ice time.
Well, that's absolutely true. Unless you're Canada in last year's Olympics, where they went with Broder and then switched him up for Luongo and then won gold.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think their 3rd goaltender saw 1 minute, and if Howard's going to be the 3rd goaltender for USA, he's not going to see much ice time, if at all. I mean, it's more as a 3rd goaltender, it's more about the experience rather than actually playing.
Yeah.
And if he's the 3rd goaltender, he's getting reps on practice and then, not playing and saving himself for the Red Wings, I'm happy.
Yeah, I'd rather he was sitting at home and, relaxing a little bit and maybe doing everything he can to not put any exertion on his groin while he's watching the Olympics. That would be my ideal situation. But you're right. Usually those go to, you're the 3rd goalie, you're along for the experience with it, so I can see an argument that maybe a younger guy should have gone there, but it's not going to impact the team a whole lot. If you got to throw in your 3rd string goalie, your team's in trouble to begin with. So I was a little irritated by all the righteous indignation that came out with, Jimmy Howard made the Olympic team. Oh, who cares?
There are a few people who were surprised Jakub Kindl did not get the call for the Czech Republic.
Yeah,
Are you surprised?
The Czech team does seem a little unusual to me. Yeah, I mean, I guess they were trying to pull a lot more guys there in the KHL or closer to teams that they have there. And I guess that's fine. I don't think the Republic was looking at realistically meddling, unless they somehow combined with the Slovaks maybe to make some one singular country. I don't think that's ever happened before though. But the thing that I noticed, I thought was kind of unusual that they put Yager up there, but they didn't pick. Yeah, I just had a complete brain fart on who those two forwards were that they didn't take with them. But it was surprising.
Well, one of them could have been Martin Firk, although he hasn't had a very good year with the Griffins, or really Toledo at that point.
Yeah, he's been a little unusual this year. From everything I heard from him coming up to this year, I was expecting him to just keep right on rolling into Grand Rapids. And so far, at least this year, it hasn't happened.
I'm not sure either. I thought he looked pretty good in the developmental what's it called? Developmental training camp, and then at the actual training camp, I thought he looked really good as well.
Yeah.
So I was a little surprised about it, but it could have also been because there's such a cluster of players down there right now that he's playing a fourth line minute as a guy who should be on your second or first line, and it's not working. I'm not sure what's going on with him, but hopefully he figures it out soon because there's a lot of potential for him.
Jerry Hoodler and Radim Verbata, those were the two people I was really surprised didn't make the Czech hockey team.
That is
sorry to jump around there, but that was going to bother me if I didn't find that.
No, that's great. I was surprised that I didn't hear about Jerry Hoodler as well. I mean, he's been such a big piece for Calgary this season and last season. I mean,
Hoodler seems to be a point-a-game player almost there, which I feel like if he was a point-a-game player in Detroit, I would have made the argument of, well, if I played with Henrik Zetterberg, I'd be getting a lot of points too. But being out there in Calgary by himself, that a lot of that just has to come from him being by himself, doing more with less, essentially. So
it's also he's playing a lot less defensively, and he's way more offensively, and he's gotten more time on the ice. I mean, that's really what it is. You play 80%. You focus 80% on offense, 20% on defense, and you get 23 minutes a game to play. Whereas in Detroit, he had 17, 16 minutes a game, and at 60% defense, 40% offense.
Yeah, like some of that could just be that, like you were mentioning, second-line minutes versus first-line minutes. I don't know, but just given how good he's been, that you would expect some of these other guys to do better than him. I was kind of surprised. And Radim Verbata has been a second, third-line guy for Phoenix, and he's been one of their most consistent scorers, too. So that surprised me as well.
Yeah, the one thing I don't think anyone was, although I kind of made a joke about it, was Cal Quincy being snubbed by Team Canada.
Brendan Smith, too.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And then Justin Abdicator didn't get the call for Team USA. But then again, neither did Bobby Ryan, so I'm not too surprised.
Yeah, the way Team USA seems to be put together right now is it seems like, very much top line, scoring line, second line, does a little bit of that. Third line and fourth line are your penalty killers, your grinders, your things like that. So when Justin Abdicator wasn't picked, that I cannot kind of understand because I feel like there's Americans that play that role better than he does. But with everything that was made up with Bobby Ryan, I don't necessarily agree with it, but I can understand where they're going with it in the sense of roster construction.
Okay, let's finish off this hangout with upcoming games and predictions. We're on the road for the next 4 games against the Sharks, Kings, Ducks, and Rangers. That's going to be a tough California swing, and then traveling all the way across the United States to play the Rangers.
Yeah, I was looking at that schedule, and that really threw me off. Is also as someone's sitting there making it and saying, okay, then they play the three California teams, and we need to throw someone in close by. Colorado, Vancouver, Phoenix. Oh, wait, the Rangers. On the complete opposite side of the country. This makes sense.
Exactly. So what do you predict that the Wings will come out with in terms of points or victories, and who's going to be your player?
If
Who's
I
going to be
think
your star?
I'll answer the second one first. I think Zetterberg is going to be the guy that puts the team on his back, just because one of the biggest issues with the team has been scoring depth. Is that a majority of the points are coming from either Zetterberg or Datsuk, and when they're not there, scoring has been awfully difficult to come by. So I'm going to say Zetterberg is going to be the player of the game, even if that's not all that interesting for it. And I'm going to say they beat the Rangers, but they lose the other three in a shootout.
You really hate the Red Wings in the shootout, don't you?
I feel like this year I've been given reason to. But maybe Kyle Quincy and Brendan Smith are so enraged by their Olympic snubbing that they all of a sudden step up their game and save it. I don't know.
What they need to do is bring in Thomas Holmstrom to do the shootout for them.
Todd Bertuzzi was great at it a couple years back, and then this, not so much. So I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, I'm going to go with 2 victories. Honestly, I think they're going to beat the Kings and the Ducks. I don't know why. I just have a feeling they're going to beat the Kings and the Ducks.
That Ducks roster doesn't seem like it's changed too much since the playoffs, and they seem to know how to handle them. So we'll see.
Yeah, and I'm going to go with 5 points. So they're going to win, or they're going to lose one of the other ones in overtime or the shootout as well.
Yeah.
So hopefully that's how it goes, and I think it's going to be all on the back of Jimmy Howard. If he has a good game, the Wings are going to win, and if he lets in too many softies, the Wings are going to lose.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Except against the Sharks, because they always seem to be able to beat Detroit for one reason or another.
That's very true. So to end this, do you have any last second comments you want to make or questions?
Puck Daddy put something up about the top jersey sales for 2013, and I thought it was kind of interesting that number 1 was obviously Sidney Crosby. Number 2 was Pavel Datsuk, and Henrik Zetterberg made it somewhere there into the top 15. So that's interesting.
Yeah, that's and who knows, that could have been spurned by the Winter Classic. Let's get some Datsuk Winter Classic jerseys.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's seeing Datsuk have that kind of appeal around the league and around the world is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
My last comment's gonna be Gustafsson going to Sweden. Did you ever see him getting the Olympic nod to Sweden happening?
I didn't. It's nice to see that he's played himself into that position. I certainly think he deserves it. But to be perfectly fair, I can't think of that many Swedish goaltenders outside of Lundqvist to begin with. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think the third goalie's from the KHL and he's 33. So, I mean,
yeah, going with him over Jonas Enroth is the only other one I can think of.
Yeah, I think they went Enroth, Lundqvist, Gustafsson, but
something like that.
For some reason, they said something about the 33-year-old KHL goalie. So yeah, I don't know if they didn't go with Lundqvist.
No, they went with Lundqvist. They didn't go with Enroth. I was just mentioning that because that's the Swedish goalie I can think of.
I thought I read somewhere that they went with Enroth. I guess I was wrong. Gustafsson beat out Enroth. I like that.
Yeah. Well, if it's given between those two, it's a pretty clear-cut choice because Gustafsson's been pretty good this year, and Enroth I haven't heard anything about. So, yeah.
Right.
But yeah, okay, I got it in front of me. Jonas Gustafsson, Henrik Lundqvist, and person I don't recognize from the KHL. So there you go. Perfect.
I guess that'll be the end of the 14th episode of the Octopus Hangout, also known as the Gustav Nyquist episode, which I just decided it would be known as.
Yeah, whatever happened to that guy? He was supposed to be amazing, and he's been kind of a letdown.
Have a great day, guys,
All right,
and we'll talk to
see ya.
you in a couple weeks.